Look at this. We have found the great vandal, everybody. There is the pump house just behind, where the solar pump has been turned off so that the water is no longer leaking onto the road or into the drainage line. But what we do have is one of the, if not the culprit. He has broken this pipe and is now sucking water out of it. And while this is not a great wilderness scene, it is fascinating because it shows just a small piece of what elephants are able to do, of how intelligent they are. They would have felt the water moving in that pipe under the ground with their feet, or with his feet. And he then, he then would have dug it up, picked it out with his tusks, and has probably been sucking on it. So I'm not sure what he's doing with his back feet there. But he will then have dug it out, snapped it, and drunk from it, probably for much of the evening. And there's still water in the pipe, although the pump is off. If he sucks hard enough, he'll get it all out of the tank at Jamie and Seb's place. Look at this. Let's just excuse this as a wilderness scene, and let's rather look at it far more as a scene of elephant intelligence and possibly their desire to play. The dexterity in their trunks. It's just astounding. There's a young bull, as often is the case when there has been vandalism. Young bulls. I think he's decided that this is too long now and he needs to snap it. And Laura Moore, you say this is why elephants don't make good house pets. Well, yes, certainly one of the reasons. You wouldn't want them walking down your passage and digging through the concrete and, he's going to do a lot of snapping here. And, pulling up the plumbing. It would be disastrous, wouldn't it? Give new meaning to the cliche, there's an elephant in the room. Aren't you laughing, Fergus?
I was laughing.
You were.
I just had the ambience on and I have a ridiculous laugh.
I see. So he's also engaging in some play behavior here. There's a sort of investigative part of this. He's not really that thirsty, I don't think. He's trying to figure out how it is that this pipe sometimes has water and sometimes it doesn't. And the reason, of course, that there is water in it is that it flows uphill. That's why we have to have a pump here. And so the water that has been pumped up is now flowing back down the hill. And that's why he's still able to get water out of it. Now this is already starting to happen. We know we're close to a drought situation. We're nowhere near a situation where there isn't enough for the animals to drink. Elephants just don't like rotten water. Did you see that? Oh, you missed it, everyone. It's the first time I've ever seen it here, and it happened very, very fast. An emerald spotted wood dove landed on his ear, sat there for 2 seconds and flew off again. And before he knew what had happened, it had gone, and then he shook his head. I've never seen that happen before. All over India, the elephants are covered in various birds. The minor birds sit on them, the egrets sit on them and get free rides all over the place. But here, it doesn't happen. Elephants do not tolerate birds. And there was a dove that came and sat on an elephant. That was the first time I've ever seen that. The intelligence is impressive here. He's puzzle solving. Where does this water come from? Now, if he pulls that one hard enough, of course, he's going to do some serious damage to the pump. But I don't think he will. He's just bored, I think these guys get so bored. eating all day long. There's the bird, Ferg. It's just landed next to the water there. Can you see it there? There we go. Keith, you say you've heard the more animals play, the more intelligent they are. Well, that's interesting. You know, we had a discussion about play behavior the other day, and I said I thought only mammals did it. And a very kind viewer pointed out to me that, in fact, some birds do it, especially members of the crow family. And, in fact, I've just heard a pied crow fly overhead. And they are certainly amongst the most intelligent birds by far. And so maybe there is an element to intelligence. I'm just trying to think of, in a mammal, do the primates play more than many of the other animals? I'm not sure that they do, you know. I mean, I think baby lions play with each other when they're awake. I think they play all the time. I think it certainly is an indicator of some kind of sociality, and I think we also interpret sociality often with intelligence. And of course, intelligence is a lovely one of these discussions that we often have, because, well, what is it? There's no need for an elephant to be able to do calculus, and so does that make them less intelligent than we are? And that's because they can't use a calculator. Yes, well done, Fergus. Thank you very much for that. Their feet are a little bit large. Right, we're going to go off to Treehouse Dam now. See what we can see there. And the morning light has changed completely to this sort of washed out white colour. It is amazing. We did have one wildebeest along here a little bit earlier on. And I'm also pretty sure that one of those herds of elephants must have been the one that Tristan and Herbie were looking at, because I think they're probably in here somewhere. Right, Jamie is still trying to find where on earth those lions have gone, and I think she'd like to tell you what her latest figurings are.
They're in Little Gowrie. They crossed south. The guys have just called in. Lex was chatting to some of the guys who can drive around Little Gowrie. They haven't found them, but they have found their tracks crossing. It's the story of my morning. But Seb and I are not giving up. Maybe they left a female behind with cubs somewhere here. That's what we're going with. And we're sticking with it. We are, aren't we, Seb? Every time I see these exciting tracks on the ground, I find them crossing the boundary. Oh, hold on. Lex is trying to talk to me. Standing by. Okay, copy. So clear as mud still. I've got going southwest. The tracks have turned off Little Gowrie and towards Djuma. Alright, let's go over to Tristan while I puzzle this out still.
Okay. Well, we're still on our walk and we've evaded the elephants, but we've met up with James Hendry, who I suppose could be considered as part. Well, hold on, Craig, you've got a spider web. Could be considered part of the elephants after his morning spent with them. Now, as we were walking along, we managed to find a beautiful snake skin. Now, I'm not 100% sure what snake it's for. We can see that it's kind of got a brownish appearance on the top here, and the snake then carries on, and it's got a very sort of I would say rectangular head. So that's the head area there. It's difficult to see because the bottom jaw is not attached, but this would be where the head comes around, the front of it, and then back again. You can actually see the little pits, and then the eyes would have just been here on the side. Now, the rectangular sort of head of this shape could be a number of different species. It could be a mamba, it could be a brown house snake. They both have quite sort of squared off front heads like that, but difficult to say. It feels really weird though because of the sort of moisture in the grass this morning, and the fact that this was covered in dew. It was all sticky when we first picked it up, and it felt like sort of skin that was still alive. It was really very odd indeed, but it is now kind of dried out a little bit, and it's now going back to more snake skin like structure, but really is amazing that you can see all the details in it. And Craig was saying to me, he said, imagine how horrible it must be to be able to have to lose your skin every time to be able to grow and have to crawl out and be vulnerable and everything else. Not very pleasant at all, Craig, I would imagine. But let's leave that here. We're not going to take that with us. We'll leave it there and let it just go back into nature. But this reports of these lionesses crossing south and all over the place is very, very confusing. It seems that there's tracks everywhere, but the lions are nowhere, much like yesterday morning. The interesting thing is that I just heard now on the radio is that the tracks seem to be coming back north again. So we're going to just quickly check down towards Treehouse Dam. James is going to go down towards Shabamu and just see. You never know. Maybe the sticks have ended up coming up into this area. I'm not sure though. I heard lions roaring this morning and it sounded like quite far south. To me, it sounded like somewhere in Little Gari or Chitwa. So I don't know. Maybe that's where they are, but who knows? Let's go and check and find out. Might be an exciting walk if we find the sticks and cubs at Treehouse Dam. That will be very, very good. I'll be very happy about that. That's for sure. Other than that, we left our elephants to their own devices. It seems there was just herd after herd after herd waving through, and they were going through quite thick bush, so we had a really beautiful sighting and decided that was enough for the morning. We're not going to push it any further and not get ourselves into trouble, and so we decided to leave them and carry on. Also, the reason why we were heading towards Treehouse is just to try and see if there's any sign of Shongile. She's been kind of missing in action the last few days, and I haven't heard too many reports from her. I know Hosana was seen yesterday on Little Gari down in the south, and I think he's got a kill there. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I know he was down in that area, and so I wonder where Shongile is, and with these lions being about, whether or not Hosana maybe has moved. So I think checking towards Treehouse Dam is a great place to check. We know that these cubs both love to go there, and so it should be a really good place to go and have a look. And if there isn't anything, then it's always good just to have a little look around. Well, James, you're wondering if Hosana did manage to keep his Impala kill. I'm not sure, to be honest, James. I haven't heard anything, and being on walk, I don't have access to a radio. Herbie's got the radio, and we only have the northern channel, so I'm not 100% sure. I would imagine that James or Jamie would be in a better position to give us an update on where Hosana is and whether or not he still has his kill, or if those sticks maybe stole it or hyenas stole it. So we'll have to ask them. But I'm hoping that he got it up into a tree and that he was managed to feed off it. I know that there was photos posted last night of a leopard by one of the photographic groups that comes into this area and saying that Hosana had a kill, but both of those photos were not Hosana. They are two different leopards. One was Mofufanyan and the other one was Matimba, which was one of Safari's sons. So those are photos from many years ago and were not Hosana, so it's not what he looks like at the moment, and I'm not sure if it even was an Impala kill. Just know that he was on a kill itself, so hopefully James or Jamie will be able to provide us with a little bit more information. But it's amazing how quickly it's warmed up. All of a sudden, in the last sort of, I'd say 20 minutes, it's gotten a lot warmer, and it's almost time to lose the jersey, I think. It's starting to kind of get that bite that we get, and it's that awkward time of year as we kind of go into winter, where the summer sun is around during the middle of the day, and it gets quite hot, but in the early morning and late afternoon, it gets quite cool, so... So Megan, you're wondering what would happen if we came across a lion on bushwalk. Sorry, I thought I saw a monitor lizard on top of a termite mound there. Well, it depends on the lion really, and depends on how we find them. If we were wandering along on the road like this and they all of a sudden came up the road, then generally you'll find that they'll stop, we'll stop, and then it's kind of a game of who's going to stand still, and because if you move away too quickly, then they potentially can come after you, so you've got to kind of hold your ground and wait to see what they do. Most of the time though with lions is that they'll see you and they'll kind of just move off a little bit. The only time that they can be really, really aggressive is if they've got cubs or if they've got a meal that they're trying to protect, and then they can be a little bit more of a handful, and you've got to be very, very careful then. But most of the time with lions is they'll actually get up and move away from you. They don't really want to come too close, and only if they have to will they then charge. And if they do charge, the most important thing is that you just stand your ground, and you've got to try and make as much noise as possible and try and shout at them so that that deters them from coming close. It's not a very fun experience when you've got a big lion barreling down at you and tail is going and growling and hissing and carrying on. It's really not the best experience in the world, but it does happen from time to time. But most of the times that I've walked into lions, they've either just popped their head up and watched me, or they've gotten up and moved off. So they're not too bad to walk into. The sticks at the moment with the cubs, though, might be a different story. I was speaking to some of the rangers yesterday, and they were telling me that they've had a few sort of growls and hisses from the sticks with these new cubs, and so on foot might be a bit different. But at the end of the day, it's this part and parcel of walking out here and what we train for, and why we do so many encounters when we're in our training phases, to try and learn what to do and what to anticipate when going after these animals. Now, if we had to come across tracks of those cubs and the lioness now, and it was going into a thick area, we wouldn't follow there. We wouldn't take the risk. But if it's going towards like a dam or something like that, or a waterhole like Treehouse, then it's perfectly acceptable to follow those tracks for a bit, because you know when you do see them, they'll be quite far away, and therefore they should just watch you, and if you back away, they'll be comfortable enough that you've just seen them and gone. And so it's not too bad to follow them, except if they're going into thick, dense areas. But yes, lions on foot can be sometimes quite fun. Craig, have you ever walked a lion on foot?
Not very close, and I haven't been charged.
So Craig hasn't been charged or hasn't walked very close to lions on foot. Well, it's like I say, it's sometimes a bit of an anticlimax. I've had lots of people that have kind of wished to see lions on foot, and when they have seen them, have realized that they actually cower away more than they want anything else. But there are the odd times. I remember almost being eaten a few times by the Ottawa Pride, which was down in the western sector of Singita. There was 2 females at one stage that were highly aggressive. They had cubs, and every time you walked into them, they had something to sort of say, and they would growl and hiss, and they would come at you and mock charge, or, well, not mock charge, but they would warning charge you, and it was quite an uncomfortable time with those lionesses around. And then I've had 1 or 2 incidents with the Majingilans where they've charged at us, and that was also not a very pleasant experience. To have 4 Majingilans coming at you is not very pleasant at all. Now, we're going to check Treehouse Dam. It's not too far, it's just around the corner. So while we do that, let's go across to James, who I believe has found something small and is also a carnivore.
There's the dwarf mongoose, and it is sitting on a chimney of the termite mound in which it lives. And I was induced to stop here by one of the adult mongoose or mongooses chasing, about that size, chasing off a slender mongoose about 3 times its own size. I don't know why the slender mongoose was here. I suppose a slender mongoose might eat a baby dwarf mongoose if it could get hold of it. There's no reason it shouldn't. There is no honour amongst genera. But these chaps are now, the slender mongoose has been chased off, put to flight. Let's just move slightly around the corner here. I think we'll get a nice view. Quite exciting news about those Styx lions. I mean, it sounds like they could well be on Djuma, which would be very nice. It's one of my favourite little pans here. Well, let's see if we can induce these fellows to come out. They're all on the top of the mound here. Hello. Are you having a nice morning? Did you enjoy the sunrise from your little perch up there? Sure you must have. Yes, indeed. Difficult in winter if you're this big, of course, a little dwarf mongoose. It's not only because they're lazy that they like to come out in the sunshine. Now, Adele, you have you've asked another sort of what we would term an anthropomorphic question, and I think it's a good one. You say, will they look after their sick? They will, you know. Dwarf mongoose are fairly egalitarian. They look after their youngs, their sick, and they're aged and they're infirm. Not to the extent that human beings would, although, of course, there are some societies of human beings that pretty much abandon certainly they're old. And I think that it does. It's what gives them the tremendous appeal. The same thing that gives wild dogs their appeal, and the same thing that gives elephants their appeal to us. Just walking gently down this is just wonderful stuff. Just deciding where they're going to go foraging today. They've probably got an area of about 1 hectare, 2.5 acres or so that they will forage in throughout the course of the day. And in it, of course, the lion's calling. They are miles now south of here. I just for 1 second thought there that it might be... Well, Herbert reckons that's on the road. Let's move from here quickly. We're just going to pop round the corner. We're right next to the road where Herbert thinks they were calling. I think they're calling to the south of that. Guys, I think that audio comes from south of Gari Main. I'm on Gari Main Junction, Shibam. Let's just have a quick look. I might be wrong. We'll just pop... Oh, here are some tracks. No, there aren't any tracks. Now, of course, what normally happens with this type of thing is that we haven't been looking for the lions at all morning. Jamie has been working like a navvy looking for them. And we'll probably drive out onto the road here and bump the pride coming along. Let's see if there are any tracks here. No tracks there. Civets and porcupines and monkeys and that sort of thing. And Herbert thought he heard them coming along this road, but I don't think so. Now, Shamsun, you say, how long has it been since we've seen the Nkuhuma Pride? Shamsun, I think it's probably been about 7 years. I can't remember what they looked like. In seriousness, I don't know. It's been a long time. They have spent almost the entire summer. Once it started to rain, they went up onto Buffelshoek. They've made brief forays onto Simbambili, and they come back out and straight up onto Buffelshoek again. I don't remember when the last time I saw that full pride was. I know that it has been seen, when I haven't seen it, and then they've disappeared again. So I don't know. It's been a very long time. There's some pigs walking through there. Can you see them just in the grass? We had such a nice question yesterday from one of the kids who said, why do they have such sticky uppy tails? Why don't they have curly pigtails? And of course it's because of grass like this that is the case. They must be able to find each other in grass like this, and the only way you can do that if you stand 1 foot off the ground is to have some sort of a flagpole. And that is indeed what they have in the form of their tails. Let's keep moving along the road here. We're heading towards where Jamie was, or is. She's much further east of here. And we'll keep an eye on the road, but I think those things are well south of us. I don't think that they are around there. I just need to blow into my earpiece because it's getting a bit blocked. Hold on. Happens from time to time. Comms test. Comms test. Nothing. Ah, there we go. Perfect. I can hear now beautifully. We'll just ease along here and then turn north, but I think these things are well south. Last time I saw the Nkuhuma Pride, I hesitate to say this, but I think it was the day after our second TV show in January. I think that's the last time I saw the full pride. They were on a buffalo kill, and they were just off Zoe's Road, and I don't think that I have seen the full Nkuhuma pride since that day. So those cubs are going to be almost unrecognizable to us when we see them. Well, they will be unrecognizable. We won't know them. We certainly haven't seen them for an extended period, and that means those cubs are going to have grown into an almost unrecognizable form. Now, Tristan is just inside here, and he's going to tell you where he thinks the calls are coming from.
Well, we are indeed. We are not too far. We got to Treehouse Dam and we heard this big imminent roar come from the south of us, and it sounds like they are just south of Treehouse Dam, somewhere between Gowrie Main and here. Now, we had some Franklin's alarm call now very close to us, so I want to just check where it is, and it sounds like for a female. It doesn't sound like a male that's roaring, so I think it's a female or a lioness that is here somewhere, and we're just looking around, just trying to see. The problem is that, as you can see, it's quite dense in here, lots of grass around, so seeing tracks is really very difficult. So we're trying to rely on using our ears more than anything else to be able to hear what's going on, but we're going to try and just see if we can't find any sort of signs of them, and trying to move through this thicket and see if there's no sign of these females in this area. They often will move around in thickets like this, particularly if a female's calling at this time, means that she's looking for the others, and so hopefully we'll find them somewhere in here. Now, we're going to go across to Jamie, and she's also in the area helping us follow up, but while we crisscross, let's go across to her.
I can actually see James trundling along Gowrie Main, making his way in this direction, so we both heard a lion roaring to the south of our boundary, or close to the south of our boundary. Not 100% sure. I was right in a dip, so it was quite difficult to work out exactly how far away this lion is. I think it's one of the males, but I was hoping it might solve the sticks dilemma. I have found tracks. Oh no, is that another lion track? This is really getting confusing. Sorry, Chantal, I'm just chatting to Herbie and James. Copy. James, did you have audio of more than one a bit earlier? Copy. I'm not convinced the Styx Pride have crossed south. I'm just going to keep checking this area. Okay, copy. Thanks. Right. Sorry, Chantal. What was the question about lions? Now Zach, who is 7 years old. Zach, you want to know, do lions ever join other lion prides? Not really, no. It doesn't often happen. Sometimes when there are situations where it looks as though a lion has come and rejoined a pride, it might actually be because she originally came from that pride, and then she moved away. Maybe she had cubs and there were other males in the area and she was scared, and she split away from her original pride and then came back to them. There might be one or two situations where a lion might join a pride, but it's very, very rare. It doesn't often happen because remember, what makes a pride so strong, what makes a pride so special, is the bonds between the females, and a pride is a group of females. It doesn't include the males unless they're still very young. And what makes it strong is the fact that they're all related to each other. Cousins, sisters, aunts, daughters. And that's what creates that very, very powerful bond between the various lions. So it doesn't often happen that a lion gets accepted by another group of lions because they're not related to her. or him, so why should they worry too much? But sometimes when strange males come in, like with the Birmingham boys, they kind of become part of the pride. Not really. They're still dominant in the area, but they spend a lot of time with the pride, and that's because they're the dominant males of that area. They've fathered the cubs. The cubs, they are the fathers of those cubs. So the pride almost accepts them, and I guess that's an example of strange lions coming in and being accepted, whether the lionesses want to or not at some point. I know that this morning I've been very focused on these Styx lionesses, but it's because they've made a puzzle for me, and I haven't seen anything else in this area. They've just created this test of problem solving that's actually driving me completely mental, because I can't work out what they've done. They've done a circle, and I don't know where the beginning of the circle is and where the end of the circle is. You know when you have a roll of sellotape and you're dragging your fingernail along it because nobody's folded back the sticky side, and you're dragging your fingernail along it trying to get the part where it peels off? That's what I feel like with these tracks. They're in a circle, and I'm still trying to dig with my fingernail until I find the jagged edge. Seb, you with me? Yeah. It's confusing. Keith, absolutely, that is 100% true. Keith has heard that when lions roar, you can hear them up to 5 miles away. That's absolutely true. Their roar is incredibly loud, and it carries very far, especially on quite a cold morning. It's not cold anymore, but on a cold morning, it will travel and cover enormous distances, especially if the lion is on the top of a crest. So obviously if it's on a crest, then the sound travels further. If it's in a valley, then the sound is stopped from traveling as far as it might otherwise. But absolutely it is the case that you can hear it up to 5 miles away. If you are Brent Leo Smith, you can hear things up to 10, maybe 20 miles away, but I think sometimes he might be slightly exaggerating. Just a little bit. Just a little exaggeration. But he really does. I mean, we can be sitting watching TV inside, and all of a sudden he's heard lions roaring on Buffelshoek. That was Connor. Face full of spider web. Thanks, spider. Somewhere there's a spider shaking all 8 fists at me for breaking its web. Okay. I've checked everywhere except the Mulwati, which is where we used to see the Styx. We had the cubs playing in the sand. I've checked everywhere except there. I think that's next on my list. Now, while I do that, I'm not sure where Tristan is or what his plans are from here, but perhaps he'll be kind enough to tell you.
Well, we're all the way on the southern boundary. We just came to check quickly if we can't find anything and help Jamie and James out. But alas, I think these lions may be just south of the boundary. So there is an open area just to the south of us called Lucas Open on Little Gowrie. And it's a place that lions often like to lie. It's nice and sort of open, and from there they can see what's going on. And lions typically like more open sections that they can see what's going on, and they'll lie on the fringes and hope that prey animals will come past. So I think that's where they are. But it's definitely a female that was roaring. It wasn't a male that we heard. So somewhere close to where we are now is where they are. Hopefully they'll roar again and we'll know for sure that they're south of the boundary. But it was difficult to hear because where we were at Treehouse Dam, it sounded close, but it's such a difficult call to make a few hundred meters from either side of the boundary. So hopefully maybe this afternoon they'll come back, but it seems that whatever's going on, that they're moving quite quickly and that they've been moving all over the show. So you've seen tracks everywhere on this sort of eastern side of Djuma, and it seems that they're kind of flirting with the boundary a little bit as well. So what I think we'll do is we'll just keep kind of walking along slowly along the boundary here and just see if we can't hear anything that we can then confirm where exactly these lions may be. It's going to be sort of interesting just to see and who exactly they are and how many of them there are. I'm hoping that the guy guys that traverse Little Gowrie will be able to find them shortly, and then we'll get an answer as to how many and who. And because if they're calling like this, it just seems that they maybe, just maybe, they're looking for one another. So I wonder if the sticks haven't separated the female with the young cubs, and the two with the older cubs are now trying to find one another again. So that could be the case. But when we're doing sort of tracking like this, it's not so much like the elephants where you'll kind of work through the bushes and try and cut them off. When you're doing tracking of cats, roads are your best friend. You get onto the roads and then you use them to be able to see tracks, because it's a place that lions will often like to use. Elephants will just crash through the bush and they're not too worried about it, but the cats like to get onto a pathway, and they walk that pathway where they don't have hindrance of grass and vegetation in their face, and they're able to then walk nice and easily. And so walking on roads is often the best place when you're trying to track cats, because it's generally where you'll pick the tracks up. Also, if they do come right across the road, it's your best chance of actually seeing a nice clear footprint that you're then able to follow. So that's why we're kind of cruising on this sort of southern boundary, just trying to see if there is any sign of them at all. What is interesting as well is there's been no footprints for any leopards, which I'm just trying to see here. So Rita, who's 8 years old, hello Rita, I hope you're loving the show and enjoying seeing all the animals. You're wondering if one of the lionesses unfortunately dies, will one of them come in and start to look after the cubs? Well, I have seen it before. It has happened where a female loses her, well, the cubs lose the mother, and another female then comes in and takes over. But generally it's a female that doesn't have cubs at the time. Normally if it's a female with cubs, then they're a little bit more reluctant to do it, but if it's a female without cubs, then it does happen. There was a female down in the south of the Sabi Sands from the Charleston pride, and unfortunately most of her pride was decimated, including her sister, and her sister had 2 young boys at the time, and she then took over and raised those 2 cubs to adulthood by herself. So she did do it. And I've also seen the Solala pride, the original tailless female. She was the one that looked after the 4 Mangane pride members when they were little cubs and grew them to adulthood. So yes, it does happen, and you will find that the females will look after their cubs when they need to. But it's turned into a beautiful day. It's now lovely and warm. The sun is out, it's clear. Sorry, I thought I heard a contact call from a lion, but it wasn't. Violet, you're wondering if we're constantly on guard or if we're relaxed when we're walking. Well, no, we are relaxed because we know that if there is something, we can sort of deal with it. Between myself and Herbie, we've got enough years of experience that we'll be able to deal with whatever situation comes our way. But it's a kind of a state of sort of awareness that you're in. So you're not stressing and you're not always looking and searching, but you are keeping an ear out, you are listening, you are looking sort of generally and scanning just to make sure that you don't get caught unawares. So it's more a sort of state of relaxed nervousness, if you want to call it that. So you're kind of aware of what's going on around you, but you are relaxed enough to kind of just enjoy the moment and enjoy the walk around. If you had to walk around and you're constantly like edgy and looking, then you're going to get yourself into a mess and you're going to get yourself a heart attack at the end of the day. So for us, it's more just taking it easy, enjoying the sort of sounds and being in nature, and then listening enough that you can then prepare if there is something that comes out. So for me, it's more a relaxed state, but I don't know. Craig, how do you feel when you're walking? Pretty chilled, except when the elephants are around. Because at one moment this morning, Craig was looking at me as if to say, I don't know if this is a good idea, but Craig seems to be very chilled about it, and so am I. And Herbie's, as always, is very relaxed behind us here. He's just walking, making sure that we're not being ambushed by lions from behind at this stage. So it's all good, and there's no sort of tracks that we can find anywhere here, so these lions are definitely south of the boundary, because we're quite far east of where we heard those original calls, and calls were further west. Ooh, Natalie, this is a tough one because it depends on the person. But you're wondering what is the most dangerous animal to find out on foot. I think it depends also on the situation that you're in and the environment that you're in. But there's 3 that are very, very dangerous that you've always got to be careful of. One is a buffalo bull, and that's probably my least favorite animal to walk into. They tend to be very temperamental. They tend to have a lot of sort of attitude, and they don't have this ability to warn you about anything. You'll find with all the other animals that at some stage they'll show some sort of sign that they're aggressive, whereas a buffalo will just sit and watch, and then as you come past they come towards you. So buffalo for me is the worst one, but Elephant bulls that have potentially been in a fight or in must and are hyped up on testosterone, they can be a tough one to walk into. And then hippos out of water. So if you're on a bushwalk like this, and particularly in dry periods when the hippos will have to move long distances to go find food, and they often don't make it back to water, and you bump into a hippo out of the water, that can be a seriously dangerous animal. So those three for me are the ones that we're always kind of keeping an eye out. The cats, as I was talking about earlier, tend to be animals that move away from you more than anything else. They don't really like to be confrontational with people unless they really have to. But if you get into a situation where you get too close to cats and they feel like they've got to defend themselves, then you've got a big problem, because a cat is a lightning fast animal and obviously it's designed to kill things, so you've got to be a bit wary of that. But generally they'll try and move away and try and put on a big show to get you away rather than actually being aggressive. Alright, so we're going to carry on, see if we can't find any more signs for these lions, which I think are south of the boundary. But while we do that, let's go across to James, who's got something that the lions would love to eat.
Yum, 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 yum. Yes, they would. Mmm. A wildebeest. Sorry, not sure what came over me there. I became overwhelmed with the thought of breakfast, I think. A lone wildebeest bull. Now, we've seen this bull 3 times today. All 3 times we've driven past him and thought, maybe we can find something else. Maybe there'll be a lion around the corner. There's some elephants. But there he is, with his little sniffle. And now we have decided that he is going to form a central feature of this segment. He's got no friends at all. He's a rather sad fellow. Not sure why he doesn't have any friends. Maybe he's offensive. Maybe he's just not a nice guy. Maybe he just prefers to be alone. What is it, my boy? Why do you find yourself alone in the world, with no one to talk to, no one to watch for lions? But for the paltry efforts of the Wild Earth team, we're no good at finding lions today either. Perhaps it's that he finds that there is more to eat here. Of course, all of this is nonsense, because he's on his own, because he's a wildebeest bull, and that's what they do. Let's just move a little bit forward. And unfortunately in this area, of course, there's so few wildebeest cows that they are often found on their own. Hello, Will. You're just 7 years old and you're from Oregon in the United States, and you say, do we name the wildebeest? Will, I'm astounded that you're still awake, frankly. I think it's quite late at night, isn't it, there? Will, you say, do we name them? Not often, but sometimes. If we see the same wildebeest in the same place often, then sometimes they get a name. Sorry, we're going to head across to Jamie quickly.
Oh, here we are, sitting with a bird of prey, so not the carnivore that I was searching for, but it is a beautiful brown snake eagle, taking a moment to warm up in the sun. And of course, that very distinctive, quite fluffy head, and then the bright, bright, bright yellow eye, and very upright posture are all distinctive features of a brown snake eagle. So for those of you that are starting off on your birding list, it's a lovely one to add. It's quite a common raptor species that we see out here, and one that is very distinctive. And I was hoping one that was kind of perched there then, because perhaps it had found the lions on a kill, you know, because my obsessive nature is now not letting this go. You do find that certain raptor species will hang around where there's a situation where there's a kill. Obviously, the vultures are one of the first to arrive, and usually the most patient, because they generally don't, in fact they never really hunt for themselves. But brown snake eagles, tawny eagles, battaliers, they can also form the forerunners of a scavenging party. They're usually the first, because they fly a bit lower than the vultures. They're often the first to find a kill. But I've been sitting here quietly and just listening. I don't hear any growls or snarls or anything like that. So I think sometimes a snake eagle He's just a snake eagle. There's one last place to check, and I can almost feel the way that this is going to go. We're going to finish drive, and we're going to hear that the sticks have been found on Little Gowrie. I just have that funny feeling that that's going to be the case, that they are south. But I'm not giving up just yet. I'm going to go and check the Mulwati. Maybe we have a situation like we used to have 2 years ago with the cubs playing in the sand. I don't know. I'm going to try. The lion tracks are walking straight along this road. But I feel like I've been saying that for the last 2 hours. I'm not going to say it to you anymore. You'll just have to take my word for it. They've also been stomped on by elephants. Try for one. Oh, did it fly away? Yes, it did. Oh, James is having far more luck than I am this morning. I haven't seen much at all, but James is still with his wildebeest.
So, let's just finish your question there. You say, do we name them? And I said, if we see the same ones in the same place quite often, then yes, we do sometimes. Brent, for example, named one from Cheetah Plains that was always in the same clearing, and he called him Norman, which is not a very nice name for a wildebeest, I don't think. Anyway, he was called Gnorman, the Gnormus Gnu, because we sometimes called wildebeest gnu's. But normally we don't, so this chap doesn't have a name, but Will, you can call him whatever you like. And in fact, because his name begins with a W, and in fact the first 3 letters of his name are the same as yours, why didn't we call him Will the Wildebeest? But will we recognize him the next time is the only problem. He's very scandalized that I think we wouldn't recognize him, you know, such a magnificent fellow that he is. And if there is one animal on this reserve that is happy that we have not found the Styx Pride today, it is this chap. He is very, very happy that we have not found the Styx Pride. Now we have a question from James, and again, much like his question with the manatee lungs that we had a little while back, you say, which antelope has the highest or fastest development rate? And I just don't think I know the answer to it. Let me think carefully. We know when they wean, of course, and they all wean at roughly proportionately the same time. Are any of them more precocial or altricial than the others? No, they all get up pretty much at the same time. I tell you what, I think you'll probably find something like a sable antelope or a roan antelope or an eland. They probably develop very slightly more slowly than, say, an impala or a wildebeest, because they tend to live in thicker bush away from water and therefore away from lion prides. And so they don't perhaps have to be able to move quite as fast, quite as quickly as, say, the wildebeest or the impala or the little steenbokkies. In fact, the steenbokkies are probably not that quick either. But I think you'll find any animal that lives out in the plains and that has to move quickly will probably develop slightly faster than antelope that don't. And so wildebeest, especially up in East Africa, of course, they have to get moving, have to get on to their first migration within the first 6 months of their lives. I think that they probably develop the fastest. But I mean, again, we'd then have to define what we mean by development. Do we mean muscle structure? Do we mean brain development? Do we mean weaning? Do we mean, movement onto soft or at least onto grazing? It really would depend on what we meant by that. X-Ranga, you're looking at the stripes on the wildebeest there and wondering if they're formed by a different length of hair. I think they are, yeah. You're absolutely correct. They're just slightly longer patches of hair, slightly darker as well, I think. But they're certainly, you can see he's got very black hair on his face and the charcoal color in the rest of his body. But you can see there are the stripes. And you can see almost certainly that there is slightly longer hair on those stripes. And I think much the same for a zebra. Those are to deter predators. I don't buy any of the weird and wonderful fangled theories people have for zebra stripes. Every year or so, some editor of some wildlife magazine, desperate for content, sends out for an article on zebra stripes, and we get the latest newfangled ridiculousnesses that come through. And some of them are quite fun to read. They're mostly fun to read. I'm just not sure that I buy many of them. Now, in front of us we have some impalas. Let's just sneak a little bit forward. We also had a lilac-breasted roller that is now flying in. That has morphed into a hornbill. It's not a lilac-breasted roller. And it was chasing a ground scraper thrush off the ground here. And I wanted to see if we could see that. Now this seems to be just a couple of impala. Ooh, hang on. Wait a sec, Ferg, before you do anything. This hornbill's doing its ridiculous display. We'll pretend not to look at it. Can you see the hornbill there? Anyway, let's have a look at the impala. We've got a male and a female on their own, which I think is quite interesting. There's a female. She's obviously been kept here, I suspect, by the aggression of the male, because otherwise it would be very unusual to find her on her own like this. She'd normally be in a much larger grouping. There is the ram. Now, Nick, you're wondering about the purpose of the black tip on the impala's ears. I'm very tempted, Nick, to just say that I think it's probably some kind of following mechanism. That it allows them, when they're very young, to be found in amongst the long summer grass by their mothers, perhaps. It probably allows them to follow each other when they're running away from predators. That would be my guess. Nick, almost universally, that is the default sort of explanation for anything that can be seen obviously from behind an animal. But whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. That's why I gave a little sort of chuckle beforehand, because I've never actually come across it. I've never been asked that before. But just about every other time I've been asked, why has a waterbuck got a round thing on its bottom? Why does a kudu's tail white when it lifts his tail? Why has a lion got a black tip to the ear? What's the point of that? Why do they have a white tip to the tail? Why do warthogs stick their tails up? It's almost always as some sort of following mechanism. In the case of the impala, I don't know. I'm going to guess that that's what it is. Black and white, both very obvious colours to see out here, especially if you see well at night. So I hope that you will accept that as an explanation. Hello, Skip. Just 12 years old in Texas, also still awake. You say, are all baby animals here born with teeth? No, Skip, they're not. Quite a few are. We get two kinds of animals born here. Skip, basically, one are called precocial and the other are called altricial. Precocial is an animal that's born very well developed and often born with teeth. And then an altricial animal is often born with its eyes shut, its ears closed, and no teeth at all. A lion cub will be a very good example of an altricial baby. They're born completely helpless. But a precocial baby would be something like an impala lamb, which are born with very small teeth. And so most of the antelope would be born with teeth. And interestingly, the only predator that I know of that's born with teeth is the hyena. They are born with teeth. But most of the rest are born without teeth. In the predator world, or in the carnivore world, and in the world of the herbivores, everything is born very precocial. They can almost run from birth, and so they have to have these little teeth, and they wean more quickly than lions do. So they start eating solid food much before lions and much before any of the other predators, Skip. It's a really good question. And we, of course, are a little bit like all the predators. We are not born with teeth because it takes us a long time to start eating solid food. And let us not forget the bird sitting on the back of that Impala, the red-billed oxpecker, and that noise you can hear him making, that pss, 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 will be what Herbert and Tristan are listening out for all the time. It is the warning that there is something up ahead, and often it will be a rhino or a buffalo. And it's buffalo, of course, that they want to watch out for. They do not want to be walking into buffalo or rhino without warning. And so listening to the call of the bird like that is very important if you're walking around on foot. Hello, Ginger. That's a good one as well. You can see that oxpecker there just sort of looking through the fur or scissoring through the fur of the Impala, looking for ticks and things, and you say, what on earth do they eat in the winter when there aren't many ticks around? Well, they eat ticks because there are some ticks around, Ginger, but they also are not necessarily confined to eating ticks. Almost all of the birds out here have an extremely varied diet in the winter, otherwise they would die. So none of the fruit-eating birds that eat fruit almost predominantly during the summer can eat fruit during the winter. There isn't any. So things like barbets and grey lories and that sort of thing, they will have to make do with whatever insects they can find. And although there are far fewer insects in the wintertime than there are in the summer, there are some around. And the oxpecker will be the same. They will have to eat other insects, they will have to eat as many ticks as they can find, and they will also keep wounds open. They'll pick open wounds that the animals they sit on have, and those wounds will provide them with a source of blood which will keep them going throughout the dry months. Because, of course, remember, an oxpecker doesn't eat ticks for the sake of the tick. It eats ticks because of the blood that the tick has sucked out of the animal. And that's so they'll pretty much, they'll make sure that they can get some blood from an open wound here or there. I think you'll find that just about all animals lose condition during the winter time. Well, Jamie, I'm hoping during the course of the winter, you say, what will we see more often in the summertime, at least in the wintertime? I'm hoping that we're going to see a whole lot more in the way of lions and of buffalo, because the buffalo will come back into this area during the winter time, and then hopefully the lions will follow them. But otherwise, the mammal species are pretty much the same. Nothing migrates into or out of this area during the winter time. But the buffalo should start coming back here for all of this grass eventually, once they've finished the grass where they are. And that in turn will bring the lions with them. And Violet, you're wondering if different types of ticks stick to different types of animals. I think some do, but mostly no. Mostly beggars can't be choosers, and if your method of attaching yourself to an animal or finding prey is to hang on the end of a piece of grass and wait for it to walk past, no, I don't think they are particularly specific to different animals. You might find one or two species that are better suited to sucking the blood from different species, but no, I think they're probably all will go for whatever. But like mosquitoes, they're not particularly they've got very Catholic tastes. They're not particularly fussy about what they eat. And I think ticks you'll find are exactly the same. Certainly I have found all manner of different kinds of ticks on my own body. It's not a very pleasant experience, that, of course. And I've also seen lots of different kinds of ticks on various animals here. Now, astoundingly, still on the radio, I have heard nothing about those Styx lionesses. I don't know if they've been found in the south, maybe. Who knows what's happened to them. Alrighty, let's move on from our impala sighting. That was possibly the longest impala sighting I've ever had in my life. We'll head up towards the far western sector of Djuma now and see what's going on there on the boundary with Arathusa. Yes, have a nice day. And while we do that, I believe Tristan has got something to tell you of ethnobotanical worth.
Well, botanical worth to us on the show, yes, because it's been a haven for insects. The wealth area strikes again, and we've got a grasshopper that's looking very sorry for oneself. Now, of course, the wind would come up as we decide to start doing this. It hasn't been a breath of wind all morning, and now that we want to get close up of a grasshopper, the wind is now gusting. Lovely. Right, so what we've got is this grasshopper, which I think could be actually dead, given the proximity we are to the grasshopper. The grasshopper doesn't seem to be caring too much about us, and unfortunately it's lost one of its hopping legs, so it's not going to be able to get away too much. You can see on this side there's no big powerful leg to make it hop nicely, so unfortunately this grasshopper, I'm afraid, if it is alive, may not be alive for much longer today. But we've also got some caterpillars, so these are more of those Acrea caterpillars, and these guys have got very, very, very dark, defined black little hairs coming off. Now, those are not the same ones that we were seeing sort of all the way through the summer. This is a different species of Acrea, and I actually think I've seen this caterpillar somewhere in a book, so I'm going to try and see if I can't find it a little bit later, but I have an idea that it was a garden or a window Acrea. That's what keeps sticking in my mind, but I'm going to try and see if I can't get an exact ID on them. They're a little bit different to the ones we were seeing in the summer, in that the ones in the summer where these black hairs are, they had a few black hairs around the sort of head area, and then it was white coming all the way down, and they tended to be a little bit more of a yellow color. These guys are quite pale with very, very black, and then that yellow line that runs through them, so I'm sure we can find it. And unfortunately for our grasshopper, I just want to see, are you alive? No, you're not alive. Unfortunately, our grasshopper's dead, and we've noticed quite a few of these grasshoppers being dead at the moment, and it's probably due to the fact, let me try and see if I can block that wind for you, Craig. It's probably due to the fact that it's starting to get very, very cold now, and so a lot of these would have laid their eggs and have bred, and now it's the end of their life cycle, and they end up just dying on a leaf like this, and that's the end of it. So quite a peaceful way to go, I suppose. Got a view of the caterpillars moving around in the bushveld, and if they had been alive last night, a view of lions, because the lions, I think, walked past this area. We found lots of tracks all over the road, but they've been driven over by countless number of vehicles, and it's interesting to see the movement of these lions, because it seems like they came from the eastern side through the middle of Djuma, out by Twin Dams, then they came back to the east, and then they've cut north back into Djuma, and it seems like they're still going east now. So I wonder if potentially they've maybe killed something, and that's why we've heard a vocalizing over there, and this female has now gone with the older cubs to go fetch the younger cubs and bring them back to a carcass. There was a Bateleur eagle just south of the boundary in Little Gari, which can be indicative of the fact that there could be a kill on that side. So maybe that's why they're doing such a big loop, because otherwise the tracks don't really make much sense. They keep coming in and out and kind of moving around, and it's not really the normal sort of way that lions would walk, particularly with cubs in tow. Cubs normally are taken to and from food. When you've got a situation when they're hunting, they normally leave the cubs behind. Even the cubs that they've currently got, the two older ones, are not going to be participating in hunting yet. So for them, they'll have to probably leave those and hunt, but those cubs will at least be sort of half participating. Oh, we've got a casualty here. Somebody has been decapitated, unfortunately. So we've got a little dung beetle that has also come to the end of its life. Now these guys actually smell quite bad when they are dead, so we're not going to hold it on too long. Shame, buddy. That's not ideal for you, but they died quite a few weeks ago already, so that's been around for a little bit. And we'll see lots of this now. We're going to see a lot of the sort of breakdown of insects as we go along. They kind of had their thriving period. They've all bred, they've all laid eggs, and now it's time to start dying and end of their life cycle. So I didn't get the name. Sorry, Chantal, you just broke up a little bit for me. Can you just repeat the name? Skip. Skip from who's age 12 all the way from Texas. You want to know if there's anything you shouldn't pick up. Well, Skip, there's many things out here you shouldn't pick up, but I think the worst thing that you could possibly pick up out here that isn't alive is any sort of predator poo. So you don't want to get anything like lion dung or leopard dung. It's full of bacteria and it can make you very, very ill. In terms of things that are alive, you would never want to try and touch any of the big animals, and of course you wouldn't want to pick up any snakes or tortoises and affect any of those animals. Ultimately out here we're trying not to pick up these things and trying to disturb them. And then there's some that secrete foul toxins and things that can burn your skin, like the CMR beetles that cause very bad blistering, so you don't want to pick them up either. So there's quite a lot of things out here that you try and avoid. But I was talking to you earlier about the lions and where they were walking, and we can actually see that we've got a track right here. So I thought I had lost the tracks, but this is a track for a female. I'm going to just try to get out of the shadow, sorry Craig. But we can see here, the reason why I know it's a female is just from a size point of view. If I put my hand next to it, you can see it's quite large, much larger than what a leopard would be, even a male leopard. Anderson does have tracks that are quite similar to this size, but the female lions tend to have much bigger toes than what the male leopards do. The male leopards tend to have a more sort of rounded toe structure that is about that size, as opposed to these really big long toes that you see there. And then you can see the 1, 2, 3 lobes that is typical of the cats. So this is the female that's been walking with the 2 cubs by herself. And they're the ones that came out of Djuma from Twin Dams and have just been going back east again all the way along. And I don't, to be honest, have no idea where these lions have ended up. There's definitely still one behind us that's been calling on Little Gari, but this one seems to be going back to maybe where the smaller cubs have been left behind during the night. But interesting nonetheless. Now I'm just trying to look out for Herbie, because Herbie was on these tracks and was walking quite quickly. Stefan, so you're wondering how we can tell between a male lion and female lion track. Well, Paul, you would have to tell by the size. So if we had to look at a female track like we saw just now, you saw when I put my hand down, it was about, let's say, that size there, would be from the toe to the sort of back pad. Whereas a male lion, if I put my hand down, generally a male lion is pretty much the size of my hand, so his toes would almost end up there. It's also a much wider track, very large and very distinct, and they have very angular pads at the back, so you'll end up with a situation where you get kind of a big angle like that in the male lion track on either side of the pad, and then it comes down to the 3 lobes, whereas a female tends to be a little bit more rounded on the back pad. It's not always the case, but that is sometimes how it looks. But generally just size is the best sort of indicator for between a male and female. When they're still young, it's almost impossible to tell male or female from the small cub tracks when they're walking around. Now, still just kind of heading along and seeing where these tracks take us. I'm pretty sure they're going to go back into Torchwood. We're not too far from the Torchwood boundary now, and they're still going straight in a sort of easterly direction. Now, I see Herbie on the road in front of me here, and he wants flagging me down. So let's go and head across there and see what he's got. Right, so now we're going to quickly cross to where Herbie is and try and see if I can't find out why he's calling me. While we do that, I believe James is bumbling around in the beautiful morning sunlight.
What? I am, and I've just found everybody the call. Ferg, can you just stick the camera into this tree here? There is going to be a golden-breasted bunting. You can certainly see the drongo. Well, no you can't. Yes you can. It's just landed there again. But can you hear the bunting calling? Vzz. Vzz. I can see... Oh! I can see an apellis. Did you see that bird fly up and down there? It's not an apellis, you know. Everyone, I don't know if you managed to see that bird. Can you see it there, Ferg? Just keep looking around there. There is a thing there with a yellow belly, and I think that this might be a new bird for many of you. I think what we have there is a yellow-bellied eremomola. Say that a few times early in the morning. Oh man. Just keep looking around, Ferg. I'll see if I can't see one move. Just keep scanning the leaves. Top sort of left-hand segment. Top left segment. They're up there now. There are a few of them flitting about. It's almost definitely what they are. Can you see them there? Top left. Just keep going in there. Yep. That's where I saw the last one there. Yeah, they're in there. That's it. There. Yes. Stay there, bird. Show us your yellow belly. There, you've seen it. Keep looking at it. I'm going to find it in my book. My excitement levels are going through the roof. I'm having to stop myself from screaming in order to chase them away. Oh my goodness. Could this be the first sighting of a yellow-bellied Aramomala? 364. I think I've seen 2 yellow-bellied Aramomalas in my life. It is definitely a yellow-bellied Aramomala. You still got it there, Ferg? Them. How many of you have got the yellow-bellied Aramomala on your lists? That other bird there was much too big. I don't think that was a yellow-bellied Aramomala. That is very exciting. We shall have to play the call. Let's play the call again. See if we can induce them to start calling themselves. I can hear a roller calling, which does not have a very nice voice. Aramomala. Here we go. That's me playing the call, by the way. Right, let's have a look at it in the book. There it is. There is the yellow-bellied Aramomala. Isn't that nice? And you'd like me to spell Aramomala? Well, if I wasn't reading it, I would have no idea how to spell it. E-R-E-M-O-M, Aramom. E-R-E-M-O-M-E-L-A. It's exactly as you say it. Aramomala. Yellow-bellied Aramomala. Its Latin name is Aramomala icteropygialis. Aramomala icteropygialis. Very nice. Aramomala icteropygialis. Very good. That's really quite nice. I bet nobody expected me to find them Aramomala icteropygialis today, did you? No, you didn't. When you saw me this morning, you thought to yourselves, if there's one thing this fellow is not going to find us this morning, it is Aramomala icteropygialis. Well, I proved you all wrong, didn't I? Good. I'd love to know how many of you actually had that on your lists before now. And if you are a new viewer, many of our viewers keep bird lists. I believe that before we do that, we're going to head across to Tristan, who is currently doing what he's been doing since 0630 this morning.
Well, yes, we have. We've been walking along and we've been trying to see what little things we can find, but it's been very, very quiet on the insect front. We haven't found too many. We've been walking through and trying to check as we've been looking for these lions, and it's been quite quiet on that front. So it's been nice, though, to be out and walking in this beautiful sunshine. It's such a pleasant temperature at the moment, and it really makes for nice walking around. Especially here in the bush, we kind of often get on the vehicles and we drive and we forget about just the feeling of being out in nature and just feeling the sort of environment and having all the sounds and listening to the birds. It really is quite nice just to walk through, and especially when you're in the company of Craig and Herbie, there's generally a few laughs along the way as well, so it is quite fun. Now you can see we are going through some quite thick, horrible stuff at the moment, which I'm sorry about, Craig. I'm going to make Craig's life a little bit difficult going through here because he's going to have to duck with his aerial. But come, Craig, let's see what we can find. I'm sure there's something lurking for us in amongst these thickets. Now in places like this, you've often got to be quite careful for especially buffalo. We were talking about earlier that buffalo are one of those few animals that you don't really want to come across too much, and this is a kind of area that they would love to hang around. We're not far from water. Twin Dams is on the other side of the riverbed, and it's thick vegetation, and particularly at this time of the day, before it gets too hot, the buffalo will be out feeding, and they're going to be moving around in areas like this, and then they're going to start making their way to water. So we've got to be a bit careful when we walk through here and listen to what's going on and make sure that we're not getting surprised. Now, the last time I walked through here, I got surprised by our friend Hosanna, who was lying in the grass and popped out in 5 meters in front of me, but we weren't live at that stage, and it was actually on a vehicle, so I had to go back to the vehicle, and by the time I got back, he disappeared. But it's amazing also to see how the grass is changing color now. You can see we're starting to get a lot more yellow hues in the grass at the moment. It's not like what it was earlier in the year or a few weeks ago, where we had a lot more kind of green. Oh, I wonder if our butterfly is going to sit. Hold on, there's a beautiful butterfly here, Craig, that I'm going to try and see if it's going to sit. It looks like it might. You can see it just hovering about there. So it's one of those ecreas, which is pretty much the same as what the caterpillar was that we saw just now. And I was hoping that it was going to sit. You can see that they've probably dried out. There we go. That's very nice. It's a little ecrea, its name, and you can see it's kind of opening its wings, which is a good indication that it's a butterfly. If it was a moth, it would have sat with its wings down, and butterflies, they sit with their wings up like that. And the reason why is because those wings are very brightly colored, and so it would attract predators to them. But when they sit like that and they fold their wings up, you can see how difficult it would be to spot that butterfly on that piece of grass if we didn't know it had already landed. So very, very clever tactic to be able to avoid predation from this little butterfly. So well done, butterfly. And then off we go again. Now it's starting to warm up, so they're going to get quite active and start flying around quite a bit. I'm just going to try to see if we can't negotiate our way. Craig, I think it's going to be easier this way. Down towards Twin Dams and see if there's anything there. There's been a francolin that's been complaining the last hour and squawking, so I wonder if there's not a bird of prey somewhere close by. So Mac, you're wondering if there's any South African fauna that wasn't part of the native fauna originally that is now seen. In terms of big animals, not that I can think of. It might have caught me off guard here, but not that I can think of. In terms of smaller things, we've got quite a few insects that have been introduced, a lot of plants that have come in. So there's things like lantana, blue gums, which are a type of tree. Just careful, Craig, behind you. So there are quite a few different sort of species of insect and trees that are a problem. Now I believe Jamie's found one of my favorite birds, so before it flies away, let's get across to her.
Most of them have flown away, but I think we might just get lucky and have one last view of our ground hornbill before it disappears onto Torchwood. A family of at least 3 from what I've seen this morning. Oh! Here comes a young one, a very, very young ground hornbill. You can see it hasn't yet developed the bright red patches around the face. It's almost a sort of a pinkish color. So that is one of their offsprings. And off it goes behind the termite mound. One of the most endangered bird species that we see out here. I'm thoroughly entertained by the fact that the adults decided to fly away as the baby came in. Nope, I'm not interested in you right now. Maybe it just doesn't trust the young one's landing skills. I suppose that makes total sense. Hasn't had much time to practice them. And it's just vanished off now.
I think I might have another visual. Jamie?
You've got one?
Maybe for a bit.
Oh, I see.
Where is he gone now?
Down there. Oh, Bill? Bill, hold on. You want to know about ground hornbills, and I want to tell you about ground hornbills, but I want to show you one quickly. No, it's gone. I'm just doing a very large U-turn. Shh. Bill, you want to know how many chicks a ground hornbill will have and raise at one time? She'll lay 2 eggs. Oh dear. Nope. She'll lay 2 eggs, and only one of the chicks will survive. So the one that hatches first is inevitably, it's just got that little bit of a head start to be stronger and more robust than its sibling. And through active bullying, and also passively through just basically attracting all of the adults' attention whenever they bring food back to the nest site, it will actually eventually result in the death of the second chick. So only one ground hornbill will survive at a time, and that's one of the reasons why they've got a very slow reproductive process. It then takes them 7 years to reach sexual maturity. It can take the adults years, or the breeding pairs years, if their nest site is destroyed, to choose another one and to have more chicks. So it's a very slow increasing species. They're not here, I'm afraid. They have gone. Their numbers don't increase very dramatically at all. And that's that. Oh, is it? I think it is. I thought that was a ground hornbill, but it's not. It's a tree stump. Oh well, we've got some kudu to look at instead. In the front of the vehicle. Sorry, Seb. Got some kudu crossing. We can look at something other than the back of my head while I answer our Lara Moore's question, which is the Abyssinian ground hornbill as endangered as the southern ground hornbill? It's also quite an endangered bird. I'm not sure exactly where it stands in terms of is it more or is it less than our ground hornbills. I'm tempted to say it's more endangered because it's got such a small range. It's an endemic creature. Our kudu, of course, are not an endangered species at all. I'm distracted. I'm just looking for a picture of this particular ground hornbill so that you can see what it is. You can have a look at the kudu while I find it. I would say that there's probably a chance that the southern and the northern ground hornbills are almost equally endangered. And the northern one's got such a small range and is in such an awkward place. I'll show you in a second. We'll just watch our kudu disappear. The ghosts of the bush, which is what we were chatting about earlier this morning. Beautiful, graceful creatures. This is the Abyssinian ground hornbill, or the northern ground hornbill. Looks relatively similar, apart from a slightly more or larger amount of blue around the face and slightly less red. But if we have a look at, there we go, there's the female and the male. But if we have a look at its range, it is completely endemic to this part of Africa. And let's be completely honest, in terms of politics and geography, that's not the best place to be if you're a wild animal. Just in terms of the unrest and civil strife, and essentially just really desperate living conditions that a lot of people do live in that exact strip. And it's not the ideal scenario for any kind of wildlife to be protected. I'm not saying that there aren't amazing reserves in there, and I'm not saying there aren't amazing protected areas. It's just that the further you go into a situation where there is civil strife, one of the first victims after people are the animals and the wildlife of an area. So I would say probably equally endangered, if not even more so. Right, you've just seen our kudu disappearing off onto Torchwood. James has found a very tiny one.
Well, it is quite tiny. It's not on its own. It's with a whole lot of others which have naturally decided that they'd rather not be here because we are now here with them. And so they're wandering into the shade of the bushes here. And I suspect they've been spending the morning devouring leaves, possibly even the silver cluster leaf leaves like the elephants have done. And now it is time to ruminate on life. They will rechew their breakfasts, consider and ponder the inexorable truths of the universe while they do it, and hopefully come up with some answers that will leave them with a great sense of comfort and well-being. And it will sort of tide them over until the next time that they have to start eating. Not so, Fergus. Do you think that's exactly what's going to happen? Mm-hmm.
They had some way of describing what they...
Yes, exactly. If only they and the other ruminants had some way of writing down the profound philosophies that they devise while lying in the shade and ruminating. Instead, forever it will be a mystery as to what they come up with, how they achieve that Zen-like and completely peaceful visage and attitude. We shall never know. We shall just have to muddle along the same way that we do now. Now, Windbill 1, you say that a kudu has an odd name. And where does it come from? Why is it called a kudu? Windbill 1, I'm actually not sure. I used to know. Let me just check for you. I can actually tell you straight away. You just keep watching that kudu, Windbill 1, and I'll tell you where the name comes from. Often these names, you know, their origins are lost somewhere in the mists of time. But I'll have a look here quickly and see. Oh, there we go. It's a Khoikhoi name for antelope. So Khoikhoi would be basically sand bushmen, if you like, very closely related peoples to the San Bushmen, and they were part of the southwestern Cape of South Africa when the first settlers landed here. They were the people, I think they were probably called strandlopers quite a lot. There was an offshoot of them, which meant beach walkers, and they came up with the name kudu. That's where it comes from. Thank you very much for asking me that. I didn't know that at all. I feel like I've read it before, but, you know, things just come in and go out. There's so much to try and remember. Right. We have some answers on the bird lists. And Sierra, you say that's a new bird for you, the yellow-bellied Eremomola. Did anybody actually have it on their list? Did anybody? Is it not a new bird for anybody? I'd be fascinated to know. Up and over the bump and down the main road. There is a pig. This pig is a lonely pig. No, it's not. It's normally here on its own, but it's got friends today. In fact, it's got offspring. I think there's a boar that lives around here as well. They are the least brave pigs in all of Djuma. You can see how the light has changed. Isn't it profound how it's changed from where we begun? Just really not very brave at all, are they? But underneath that smashed up and mangled marula tree over there, there is often a big pig boar in the shade. I suspect as it gets warmer, he will emerge from wherever he is now and go and stand there in the shade where he can see anything that wants to come and get him. Because, of course, well, as we know, especially at this time of the day, pig is a particularly good thing to have on the menu. Ah, yes, the wind is blowing from the southeast, which is, of course, the direction that we're heading now, towards the camp. Amanda's pig-killing skills coming to the fore. Much looking forward. Bye, pigs. See you later. We won't eat you. Now, I think that I've heard on the radio that Jamie is going to be fetched. Not Jamie's going to be fetched, Tristan's going to be fetched by Jamie. They have walked a long way looking for animals today, and I think she's going to fetch them from Twin Dams, because that would be a very long walk to Amanda's breakfast from Twin Dams. We should arrive, therefore, at the breakfast table before Tristan and Jamie, and therefore we shall, well, probably be slightly less nervous about where our portion is going to go. Sitting in the mud?
In a dam.
In a dam. That's interesting. I believe that Jamie is sitting in a dam.
My only conclusion for this morning is that the sticks have gone to the south, but we have a nice surprise for the end of the morning safari. We have the 2 hippopotamus. Not 1, but 2. Originally it was just inhabited by 1 grumpy hippopotamus. Now he's got a friend to keep him. Hippo. I assume that it is, but I honestly have absolutely no idea as to whether or not that's the case. Could be 2 completely different hippo. Who knows? They probably know where the lions are. I tried asking them, but they weren't particularly communicative, which I suppose was to be expected. I'm guessing the lions have to be south. I guess they had a kill and cubs, and they were backwards and forwards to fetch the cubs. I'm just going to have to try again on the sunset safari. Pull a few strings and chat to a few guides in between the drives. But a nice peaceful morning safari. Elephants, kudus, lots of lovely creatures out here. Sure, this time difference makes a huge difference in terms of the temperatures out here. And just like that, they disappear. And Kitty Cat, welcome. You want to know if we do live sunrise and sunset drives all year round. We do, Kitty Cat, every day, twice a day. And that will probably never, ever, ever change until we're old and grey and struggling to get in and out of the cars. Absolutely we do. We do a live safari every day. Our next safari will start at Central African time this afternoon. So we will be doing, and even when most of us move to Kenya, the Djuma team will continue. Seb will be part of that, and they will continue to do live safaris from here. So never fear, nothing will change, things just expand and get bigger. Alright, on that note, it is time for us to say a farewell to you all, and time to do our goodbyes and our thank yous. Thank you, Seb. I'm sorry we didn't find the lions. We tried. We were so close.
Very hard.
And the leopard. I know. We needed that extra half an hour. We would have made it. We'd have seen both of them. Maybe not. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration. But I feel like we could have had some better luck. And thank you to Chantal, who's done her second show of directing as the first director and keeping us all in control. Most importantly, a big thank you to all of you. Join us on the Sunset Safari. Who knows? I might just find the Styx lions. We'll see you then.